who is Australian? How do you define it? Is it just related to the people 300 years ago who were there, or is it just the second generation now who've kind of forgotten that their forefathers also migrated?
Divesh Sareen is an entrepreneur, author, speaker, and community leader, helping people grow through storytelling, leadership, and innovation. Recently recognized as a TEDx speaker, his work empowers migrants and connect cultures where all voices are valued.
If we are coming from like the same place, how do you feel that is contributing the human fear to this debate?
The fear part obviously comes off that you might be replaced one day because there's someone who's fighting the odds better. I haven't yet seen a migrant who doesn't want to work in a win-win situation, who doesn't want to make sure everyone else is fed on the table, everyone gets a piece of their pie. I think being Australian by choice means something. You've chosen to be part of this country because you think it's the best, not just for the sake of it. It's literally giving away your citizenship. So does that not count for anything? Or what else do we need to do?
What was that moment like when you went back to your parents and said that you would like to marry an Australian?
That was a job in itself.
Before we dive into this conversation, please give me just 20 seconds. I know you've got hundreds of podcasts you could listen to, but any point during Unlayered, you paused and thought, that was me, or I felt that too. I'd love to ask a quick, simple favor. Please help me with a follow or subscribe to my channel, because that one click will not only help me bring more conversations to you, but for others who might need it. And it means the world for this work to continue. Thank you so much. Enjoy the conversation. Welcome to Unlayered. Really excited to have you on my podcast.
Likewise, man. Thanks for having me.
For my listeners, I wanted to start off with, let's say they don't know who Divesh is. They just have the name on the podcast title and they excitedly join the podcast to listen to this conversation. How would you explain Divesh?
Okay, I wasn't ready to start with this, but who is Divesh? Divesh, I think if you talk career-wise, or if I have to, I don't know if it's written somewhere, will be more like I'm an author. I work in tech. I help people bring their ideas to life. I'm passionate about storytelling, and I've found a purpose in life where I showcase stories of migrants' life for me to Australia, and also I would say leadership stories. That's another project that we're working on. So to answer your question, I would say author, tech entrepreneur, and a storyteller.
Is it correct if I say Divesh is a jack of all trades?
Yes, master of none probably.
It's amazing. I know that I met you a couple of years ago and I've been fortunate enough to be part of a lot of your wonderful initiatives like the Migrants Life exhibition and then getting featured as well. But it's amazing. It's amazing that we are having this conversation today in my podcast. I want to dive into each of these topics that you've just mentioned, right? So for anyone listening, you will learn about Divesh's story, what it is to be a migrant in the current world, why leadership matters, and why stories will shape the narrative of migrants and anyone. So that will be hopefully the flow of this conversation. So starting with you, Divesh, I came across your book, Indian Made, and now it's out there. One thing that was really connected with me is your story. So I know you talk about how the Indian partition back in 1947 has shaped you, what you believe as what migration is, because I believe that's one of the biggest human migrations in history that still has an impact on countries and humanity. How does that story has passed on to you from your family, and how did that shape you?
Sure. So for your viewers and listeners who don't know much about history, Pakistan did not exist in 1947. So when India became independent, it was a decision made to divide it in a way that we give a country to another religion and keep India separate. And it wasn't in the best possible way. And it was the biggest migration in human history till date. About 14 million people nearly moved. They lost their houses, and about a lot of them died as well because there's a lot of miscommunication. There was fight about religion, and you'll see trains of people dead. So I've grown up in Punjab, which is a state that was divided. Punjab means a state of 5 rivers. So that's the Punj, and then Ab means rivers. So that was divided, and a part of that was given to Pakistan. So I've grown up in Ludhiana, which is a city in current Punjab in India, and I know a lot about it. And I wanted to showcase that narrative of what people at that time went through. So then I looked into history, and we've added that piece into the book to shape the narrative with 2 reasons. Number one being actually sharing that story, which I can guarantee you 99% of Australians would not know. Also, helping people understand why we are so resilient. How do you become resilient? And it's not just we are the only ones, even generation before us were so resilient that imagine running for your life with the trains full. You probably had the last train to catch. If you miss it, you'll probably be killed because you're a different religion. And all your savings, gold, cash, because all the banks were not the best then. You wouldn't probably put that, and you probably just put it at the backyard of your house. You dig it and be like, okay, I'll come back and take it, and you just leave. All you have is yourself and your family, and obviously, being a human, you got to feed, do all the things, and you've got to start from zero, literally. I don't think we all go through that much of struggle in today's day, with things that are a lot better. But that was to showcase how resilient even people before us, and it's just part of being human and pushing through with it. That was the reason. So that's why the starting part of the book covers that journey as to how all these people died, how all these people built their life from nothing, and being from Punjab, like I've seen that very closely. As a child, I would love listening to elders because I got to learn a lot from them, and they used to tell me a lot about it. Because 1947 was not long ago.
Hearing that from you, it's still I really felt when you explaining that, because I know migration itself has different meaning to everyone and we all put different interpretations to it. But when you have to migrate when there's no choice and when your life is at stake, it there's nothing more that you can put it into words why it is a part of like a human, like if it's a part of the human history like that. I wanted to ask, like, I know that you heard this story from your elders as a little kid growing up in Ludhiana. How did that shape your beliefs in terms of that event and your understanding about migration?
See, listening to such stories about what happened and all these people are around us and what they've gone through, it kind of makes you feel that we could do better as a human race. Also, we could be a lot more supportive of each other. That's kind of how I feel, because one common gap, and we've showcased like 42 stories with migrants' life and projects, and I speak to a lot of people who migrated to try and understand there's one common thread, is that issue of belongingness. And I initially thought I was the only one who felt that way. That, okay, I'm not Australian enough, I'm not Indian anymore. Where's that thing? Why can't I relate to this guy, or this guy can't relate to me? I'm in this room, but I don't feel I'm in this room with them. Kind of like the sidelined sort of thing, and you're gonna find your own niche and your own way of life. So that's how it used to feel for them. Say if someone else has moved in from a different city or state, and from what I've seen, like, people have this issue of belongingness. That's, so you kind of feel bad for that, and you think as a human race we can do a lot better.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more, because from what I understand, that belongingness can be a construct or a challenge within one country, right? And that's what we are seeing right now. It's still, after years of human evolution, we are still talking about it, and we are still having conflicts around it, right? So I'm glad we are sharing that, and I think you deserve to talk about it coming from a state like that and hearing the stories from the elders who actually lived that experience. Now, when it comes to connecting that part, when you actually migrated countries, like from small boy growing up on Ludhiana and so that upbringing, you heard about this event, but then you decided to pack your bags and migrate to Australia when you're 21. How does that experience when and what prompted you to migrate?
A few things prompted me to move. Growing up in a little city in a middle class family sort of thing where you're not doing well financially, you're struggling, and you can relate to that as well. I know you try to showcase my story, but I know a bit about yours too. So um, when you add up the numbers or when you try and do the maths, um, to build yourself in India, to try and run a business or to do something, um, it's just, it was very hard for me the way I looked at. That was my perspective at that time. By the time I would have done an MBA, I probably would have had a loan of about 6-7 lakhs. Whereas on the other side, when I looked at Australia, you looked at all these case studies of all these guys and girls who had gone. By the time they had finished their study, most of their loan they had paid up with the part-time role. Um, I probably couldn't work at a McDonald's in India. Over here, like I could happily do that. All those things and the life that I had seen, I knew that somewhere or the other, being the elder kid in the family, I had to sacrifice so that the ones after me, they had a better life. And I kind of took it as a responsibility and as an honor that I'm the chosen one for that. And Australia ticked all those boxes. And one thing I'll probably say is, it's been better than I thought. If you would have asked me everything you'd like to achieve, that was all done like 8-9 years ago. And I was able to bring my mum, dad, brother here, make them part of this life and all those things. So, but yeah, the reason I came here was for a better life so that I could work hard, do well for myself, my family, probably send them money back. Whereas if I was to start a business in India, I needed crores of rupees and or contacts or all these things, or just been doing the little jobs probably, from what I could see.
Inspiring. Divesh, I mean, every migrant story, I believe there is this sense of responsibility, right? And it's a bit further highlighted, I would say, when you're the elder kid. I can relate to it from my experience, right? um, why it is that? Because for someone listening who is not from a South Asian country or let's say the Western side, do you think it's still we interpret the same thing in the way, or do you think it's just how you were brought up with and it's very particular or specific to a certain part of the world?
I think it's a lot by person to person, but yes, based on a country and your culture, I would say it's a lot dependent. The elder kid is expected in the Southeast Asian countries to be able to hold the fort. He's the one after the father. So the father is the traditional breadwinner, which is obviously changing now. And, like a lot of females now contribute a lot to the house as well, but traditionally, that was the case. And just hierarchically, like he's the next person in line, which means not just the glory, but the actual responsibility of doing the dirty work, you know, even when you don't want to. Being the responsible one because you've got to be a role model. I think somewhere or the other, when your brother or sister, younger ones are growing up, you kind of handball the responsibility as well, one way or the other, where you're responsible for them. You kind of the cheaper babysitter. So all those things, I think, do play a role. Plus, at the same time, if you come to that person itself, it's a sense of purpose. It's a sense of being able to give back to your family, being that support for your parents, and the confidence that's been put in you to be able to match up to it. And somewhere or the other, that circle becomes part of your life. And there's like the upgraded versions of it in different phases of life. Like today, when mom and dad are not at home, you the guy. Then you grow up, it's like, okay, you're in college, you've got to get good grades so that your brother or sister do that, so that your example can be given. And it just keeps changing. And I think migrants, when you actually migrate, a lot of that is driven by um, being able to do well financially, contribution. A lot of that is with middle class families, and also I would say it's a big risk factor that you take. That you that you somewhat understand at that time that you're going in a country where the language you speak is your second language. There's already a lot of competition where you might have to do a lot of jobs you would have never thought in your life you'll have to, and then slowly understand their lingo, their culture, and integrate into that somewhere or the other without any of your support network that you've grown up with, your friends, your family, everyone to talk to. So mentally switch that off, but it's like focus. And second, it's probably going to be one of the deepest challenges in life that you'll have to go through to be able to come out of it and do well.
Amazing to hear, Divesh, your story. And like, I quite resonate with certain points because, especially with the elder child and how that being the elder child attached you into a different kind of responsibility. But I wanted to get into your story of your earlier days in Australia. So, because migration is one of the biggest things someone can do. And as you mentioned, it's just completely throwing yourself into the unknown. And, we talk about fear and navigating fear. And then, like, migration, I believe, in my view, is one of the acts of just going through the fear. Because I know, even though you prepare yourself to understand through consuming knowledge, advice, and all that, but you will only know the experience when you migrate. Walk me through those early experiences, because I know I'm not sure whether you remember, but walk me through your earlier experiences. Maybe the exciting things that you've come across when you migrated. Did you migrate by yourself? What were those early days like in Australia?
They were amazing, honestly. Just because I had been wanting to come to Australia for so long. After I did my bachelor's, I didn't really have the money, so I got a job in a call center where it got to the point of, okay, I need to save to go to Australia to do my master's. Took nearly a year off, and I started having 2 meals a day, so I can save that extra 100 rupees, and I can get there faster. That's how badly I wanted to come, and it was kind of like, before the actual match. So, like a cricket analogy, you do your practice session or your drills. So that was the drills for me. That, okay, even in my uni days in India, I was practicing, okay, I'm going to do a night shift teaching maths online to kids in US and then go to uni in the morning.
Mhm.
And all of that, it took so much long that before I know the year was going to pass by, and one of my cousins got sick of it, and he's like, okay, I'm going to give you the money from my factory's account without telling my dad, and you going. That's kind of what it got to. So for me, coming to Australia was like a really big deal. It was like everything I had prepared for now is the opportunity, and that was World Cup for me. That was the World Cup final. So I was over the moon just so that I was able to get here. So being able to get into masters, going to uni, it was all really exciting. Um, Obviously there's a lot of things I had to learn, work out, everything, like friends. Um, but yeah, like I'm a glass half full person as well, most of the days, and that was the kind of thing. And a lot of it was just getting used to the idea of life. So I knew people here. Some of my cousins were here as well, and yeah, it's more about understanding the lingo. Even though I had got 7 bands in each module, I couldn't understand the Australian lingo. Like good, I couldn't say it. Oh, how I like, who says that? All these things um took a while, and then being able to understand the system, the public transport, the banking, the TFN, applying for jobs, or having a good enough resume. I didn't know PAM then, so all these things. That was part of it, but it was like an opportunity where I was here to like make my dreams come true.
Beautiful, Divesh. it's very fascinating to hear because it seems like it's recalling my earlier days here as well. Like, the excitement and the uncomfortness of not knowing the lingo and all these awkward moments, misfits and everything, right? But I think in every migrant's journey, there is this excitement of going through a new experience, but sometimes that excitement wears off quickly, as I believe. How do you face that? Because I know that when you move in, you get the time to settle in, and sometimes even though a certain moment or experience is uncomfortable for you, you don't really feel that because of that initial excitement. But for you, I know that you had maybe some friends, not your immediate family, but some close family members. But what were the challenges, and when that initial period was over, when you really settled in, what were the challenging moments or experiences that was part of your journey?
A few on the challenging part as well. For example, when you'll have your uni holidays, some of my friends who could afford in my circle would go back home because it's holiday time. And that's when you would kind of think that, oh, it would be nice. But I can't afford to, number one, I'm going to pay back my cousin. Number three, this is the opportunity where I could work full time and make more money so I can pay my fee by myself rather than having to get my hand out and ask for more. So mentally, it was a bit challenging when things like that happened, or when the festivals came around, or when you would call home, or when you'll have a chat to your school friend, um, and they would tell you what they're doing, and you kind of feel you are left alone. You're the only one, and you would kind of feel punished at the same time. There would be times where, say on a festival, you call home, and you would do the good old Skype calls, and everyone would be together. They'll just say hi. You, there's only so much everyone can talk, or your aunties and uncle, and you'll see them for a camera briefly. Um, and then you're like, oh, I wish I was there. And you're like, why was I the only one that had to leave everything and come here with the chance of having a better life? So that way, it is hard. It's definitely not easy. And then also being able to find that same connection that you are used to as a human being. It's not that you can pick up the phone and call a mate and be like, oh, I'm coming to your house. Let's go and get a coffee, or let's just go for a drive like you used to. And either they're at work, or that same bonding that you build over the years when you were in a uni or school, and without any um, reason that you've made friends who've always been there for you. Build that same connection with someone new is hard. So all those things do play a role.
Feeling lonely is one of the biggest challenges as a migrant on a migrant story and a migrant's life, right? But sometimes I find elements of personalities and people who somehow finds a ways to push through that loneliness. I understand that we talk a lot about being resilient and having a vision and a goal to succeed and being committed to your journey, but sometimes the other side of it also is the compromises on yourself, right? Have you had a moment in those early days where you felt like it was like maybe to question that decision of migrating?
No, that's one thing I never had. Because I really wanted to do it. I already had this set in my mind that I'm meant to do this as the elder kid of the family, even if it meant all my life was going to go in this. I was committed. It's like going to war with yourself, and you have to win it. So I knew that I would keep going till the time I can change the life for the generation after me. So that was one thing I was fixated, whether it meant you having a bad day. But I had kept myself busy in work so much. There was a point when I would start at like wake up at 4, start a 5:30 shift in the morning, open breakfast, finish at 2:30, then go for another job in IT at 4 o'clock, finish that at 8 p.m. and then come home, and then on the weekends do another night shift, and then Saturday do a tutoring class. So Sunday evening was the only time when I got to spend with my girlfriend at the time, and now my wife. So where we would go to Nando's, and that was like a treat for us. So I had submerged myself so much into reaching those goals, because that's basically all I knew, and that was my purpose in life. But very rarely I gave myself the time to even get to that part. So that was my way of dealing with it.
It's very refreshing to hear that. It seems to me like it's not just me discovering it today, Divesh, but from the very first day I had our very first conversation, I always felt like you're someone who has a vision and a purpose bigger than yourself. I know it's easier to say and it's easier to sell in social world, but it's just I feel that genuineness of you having that vision and having that purpose to inspire people. And I think from your story it's evident that that's what pushed you through, even at the challenges of you going through all those hurdles, having to pay debts, feeling lonely, having uncertainty about your future, and then now, you know, having this conversation with me and the work, seeing the work that you do, Divesh. I'm glad that you talked about your girlfriend going to Nando's and the wife, right? I wanted to tie that in to ask about, because I know that Sri Lanka, India, South Asian countries are really stronger in culture. I mean, I can relate to it, right, as well. But what was that moment like when you went back to your parents and said that you would like to marry an Australian?
That was a job in itself. So, like, happy to chat about that. I would say, well, the first interesting part was, for some reason, she still decided to date me when we went on our first date. I told her that, hey, culturally, we have arranged marriages, so I don't want you to have any expectations. Dumb thing to say on your first date when you don't know anything. But somehow she still stuck by me, for being honest. Or I don't know. So, like, she was there for me through all, when I was nothing, like being my support, friend, girlfriend, partner, in every way, shape, or form, where you need that one person at least on your side when you're here alone. And she was that one person for me, plus her family as well. So eventually, with time, when I finished my studies, we were looking at accommodation. It kind of went into like, okay, we could live in together and save the rent or this, or it could be good. When things started getting serious, between the relationship, plus at the same time when I got my residency, you're one of those eligible bachelors in your country, where you would get a lot of options for arranged marriage and dowry and this and all that. So it kind of came to the point where my parents wanted me to get married and start looking for a bride for me, and sending me photos and this and that. And that's where I looked back and be like, I would want to be with someone who's been with me since I was nothing, rather than going the traditional. So that kind of pushed that traditional guy to be like, what kind of man would you be if you didn't do this? So the part when it came to actually convincing my parents, well, later, I first convinced my cousin. Sort of convinced. It was kind of sort of like, it's happening anyways. It'd be nice if you guys came on board as well. And I had not been back home for 5 years, because I made this promise to myself, I'll never come back if I didn't get to a point where I could um make the family stable financially and all those things. So I spoke to my parents. The main challenge there was the education piece, where you see in Bollywood movies the perception somewhat they build, that the white girl would leave you, or they're very easy with divorce, or this or that, the old school sort of movies. So I had to tell them what the real picture was like. So yeah, but in the end, I told them that, hey, it's happening regardless. I'm sticking by her, and she stuck by me. So my cousin actually took a flight and came here to meet her before technically I could propose, and met Catherine. So that's kind of how it went down.
That's commitment for a cousin to come down here and to see for for real, right? And see what Divesh is trying true or not.
Key guy, mate. All this life, I've had so many people help me support me. I just come up with random ideas, and somehow people around me help shape it to perfection.
And I can see that, like, not just being lucky, but it's just the person you are. That I wanted to dive more into culture, because I know we started our conversation with culture too. Like, that's just one element of it. Um, like, I know that you stood by your decision, and then it seems like that is the leader in you as well, understanding the person who really loves you and standing by yourself in amid all the struggles, challenges. And then, because that part of breaking that conditioning from your parents who you look up to, and then that conflict that can occur sometimes is so difficult to break, because it's a conditioning of the culture or religion, that, as you said, one point could be the upbringing, the culture system, and because they don't have exposure to the other side of the world, only exposure is the movies, or maybe something else that you hear. Like, how do you see that in the current world, in terms of the religion, the cultures, and then, like, these different stories coming together, and then how it shapes this word belonging?
I think we've come a long way from when I was a student. At that time, my wife was only seen as the white girl, and was a very unique sort of thing to happen in our city, at least, like from what in our circle. I think we've come a long way. If you ignore the recent protest and this and that, that was kind of happened anyway. So, um, but yeah, I think overall we have come a long way where we understand each other better, or at least we kind of know more, rather than a surprise of what you just see on a newspaper
Mhm.
or what you see on just an ad or a Bollywood movie. There's a lot more people who have married or have partners in different cultures, and we all learn from each other. It helps us think better, connect the dots, and it adds to just understanding the empathy side of it. So, to answer your question, I think we've come along.
And what do you think is still there in terms of, like, relating to your experience at that moment, of, like, maybe, yeah, you just stood your ground. So that's sometimes difficult to do, because I have worked with a lot of migrants, and sometimes you conform into what you've been taught. And what's the other side of it? Like, let's say, if you've been taught that you can only be in a love relationship or marry someone from your same country, same culture or religion, and now that you have exposure to a whole different thing, and finding someone from a different culture, what is that experience like, and what is your message to someone who has that conflict?
See, in regards to marriage or partner, you are the one who's going to spend the rest of their life with that person. So, you have two options. Number one, bite the bullet and go with what your parents say, which is fine in a lot of cases because they'll do all that homework for you, and then you can blame them if it doesn't work out. The other side is, um, depending on what level you are in your relationship, if there is a person who's basically everything you would have dreamt of, and that person is there, don't be an idiot to just let it go without giving it a proper think. That's what I would say.
That's very powerful, because sometimes you, when your mind is, like, questioning these actions, when something like a very important decision like that, sometimes you need to understand yourself a better, and then what's important to you, and then follow your intuition, right? And it seems like that's what you have followed, and seems like it's worked for you, Divesh. um Coming back into the current landscape of migrants, especially in Australia, I know that you mentioned that we've come a long way, but I wanted to ask, why do you think that migration has become such a flashpoint in Australia?
I think with recent things and the protests and everything that's happened, there's a lot more to just those protests, I feel. People, everyone's going through the financial pinch, number one. Number two, I don't think we ever recovered from COVID fully. We still are. And those things take time. Businesses are not doing well. The interest rates are not helping. And then to top it up, AI has taken a lot of jobs that were traditionally meant for a lot of people. So all these factors, and obviously there's a big percentage of people who probably don't understand, or who probably need someone to blame, or who probably have a way of thinking. And when you're so frustrated, they want to express their opinion. And they might feel that, okay, having more people is creating this for them. It might not be new businessmen coming trying to create more jobs, or more people actually more adding to the skills that we needed, because that's been laid out by the government. Everyone's followed the rules and ticked those boxes, and then they become a resident. I think it's that, again, the education piece, like my parents needed at that time, that they need.
So, what do you think is needed to manage a similar situation better? One is education, but how would you elaborate more on what type of education is needed to understand this problem or challenge objectively?
I'll probably summarize it as something I saw on social media. All these protesters did the protest and went to a Chinese or an Indian restaurant after. And if they don't understand that part, I think there's a problem. That you did a protest about that these people are not adding value, and at the same time you're relying on food for them. So that's probably how I would summarize in the short form. I can probably have another 5-minute chat on it, but it's more at them looking at the data, more at them looking that the migration is helping the country. Also, how it is, what kind of fields these people are coming in. They're not only just doing the odd jobs, and even if they are, these odd jobs were vacant, and they still have the better opportunity to apply. If I was a student and there was an experienced person who could speak English, everything, I think it's pretty confident to say that that person will have a better chance of, on the lines of communication, being able to understand, being able to perform the job, the OHS, all these factors, that they'll be a better candidate. So the question they need to ask is, why is that other person getting that job if they really want it? Because the only other answer I can come up with is they don't. So when you actually look at the crux of it rather than the fluff, those are the questions and things that come out of it.
I'm glad that you put it in that way, Divesh. Sometimes, without trying to justify things in a politically correct way, sometimes when the information is out there and when there is a need for education, sometimes all you have to do is to raise awareness around it. And that's also a part of a leader like yourself needs to play in a country that is shaped by migrants, in my view. A, a, co- a country built with migrants.
Even more to that, I think being Australian by choice means something. You've chosen to be part of this country because you think it's the best, not just for the sake of it. It's literally giving away your citizenship. So does that not count for anything? Or what else do we need to do? Is kind of the question that I have to ask. So that's where the kind of thinking comes from. And who is Australian? How do you define it? Is it just related to the people 300 years ago who were there, or is it just the second generation now who've kind of forgotten that their forefathers also migrated, and in a way they're kind of disrespecting kind of what journey they went through at that time? Or I don't know, they're trying to get us back for it? Or is there just a cycle of picking on the weaker side who looks weak and just trying to have a say. I don't know, it's just venting out a way of it. A lot of things I can say. So, but logically, those are the things that come to mind.
I wanted to ask you, like, I 100% agree. Like, if you look beyond that part of education and the current country's dynamics of all like decisions in politics and all that, if you look at human level, what are the human fundamentals that is contributing to it? Like for me, I see humans are fear-based animals. We all have fear. And I think that contributes to this division is not only Australia, but this us and them and whole this concept and conflict around migration, that having that fear factor and the insecurity that comes out of it. How in a human level, if you just forget everything, whether it's a culture, religion, country, or nothing, how do you feel that as a human? Like if we are coming from like the same place, how do you feel that is contributing the human fear to this debate?
I think it's fear definitely is one of the things, and I think it's coming from the place of seeing people who've probably come after you do better in terms of financial or success, or feeling that they're ready to work harder, feeling that they're actually in the top job because they've worked towards it. They've done everything that a migrant was meant to do. Or maybe there was a set perception of that a migrant could only get to this level in the first generation. And now they're setting a new benchmark, and might be like they're not good enough. So they need to protest now.
So you feel like that is a factor of that is contributing towards this, that
It's like, okay, well, in my mind, the migrant was always meant to be an Uber driver or a 7-Eleven guy. But now they're CEOs. It wasn't meant to be like that. Usually you would read an article saying second generation migrant became a CEO, not the first one. And it's a lot for people to process. A lot of migrants have come, and it's a cycle that the country's gone through. But even if you ask the migrants 80 years ago, whether it's from Greece, Italy, they've kind of had to go through all of that as well. We've covered stories like that where they would talk about, like jokes being played, like, "Oh, you want the car oil to cook in it?" Um, all those things, kind of jokes where at that time their food stank. And I'm not sure if you've heard of Looking for Brandy. So we actually did a project with Pia Miranda, who was the actress in it, and she used to mention similar stuff. She's from Italian heritage, her father, and even in a book, like, and things like that, where she's covered such aspects, where growing up with Aussie kids who had been here before her and followed a different culture, or all these things, they had to go through similar stuff as well. So yes, somewhere or the other, that has got to play a role. And the fear part obviously comes off that you might be replaced one day because there's someone who's fighting the odds better. But again, that's the education piece. I haven't yet seen a migrant who doesn't want to work in a win-win situation, who doesn't want to make sure everyone else is fed on the table, everyone gets a piece of their pie. And I think that's probably the team play role is kind of helped played a role in their success.
and that's the side that sometimes people overlook when they are conditioned of this whole kind of story in a different way. And as you said, sometimes frustration gets you into it with unconsciously, without really seeing the truth as it is. I mean, some can say truth is something you cannot see because everyone has a different idea, different image of everything. So there is no single point of source of truth. But sometimes when you're unconsciously taking an action out of fear, uncertainty, or frustration, sometimes they don't see this is a cycle and how this is contributing to this bigger picture.
Yeah, and I think it would only happen with people who are not used to the idea of sharing the pie. They want the whole piece of it. So, and I don't think any good Australian would not want to do that. So I know we talk about the protest, but then I think that what might be 5%, of the total population, there's still 95% of people who think it's fine, it's the right thing, and they do remember that their forefathers went through this, and it's just a cycle, and they actually support it. Like, I've had a lot of help from people who are Australians to get where I am in life, to give me a chance. So I think it would be very wrong on me to say they are all racist. I think there's a percentage of it. But yes, I think it's the kind of people who are not used to the idea of sharing the pie.
I think I'm so glad that you shared that message, that 5% versus 95%, because I know a lot of migrants and like people across the world is listening to this. Like for a migrant who is impacted by this whole sentiment in a negative way, right? What is your message for them to shift that narrative from being a burden to a builder?
I think it's about doing what you're here to do, focusing on that, number one. Second is hanging out with like-minded people, and good people will connect with you. Find something that you're passionate about, whether it's sport, whether it's, I don't know, leadership stuff. Find that niche. The internet has helped us connect with a lot of people these days, like your meetup groups, this, that, networking. That is the one message I would say. I know that media is hyped up as well a lot on this, because that gets you the views. So it's not that bad as they're portraying it to be, is what I would say. The day the protest happened in Flinders Street, I was in St Kilda, actually doing the cricket coaching class at Cricket Victoria. So it was fine. That's literally like 5 or 10 minute drive from there. So I was safe. But yeah, even if you look back at your own country, there's idiots like that all the time. You meet people like that. So there would be people who would be racist there. But is that going to deviate you from the greater good that you had to do? Or the purpose that you hold in life, or the responsibility you have, or where you want to get to in life? I don't know. That's a question you have to answer yourself.
Love it. It's more about understanding your bigger purpose in life, and even amid of adversity, challenges, and then especially difficult phases, especially for a migrant, because there's so many migrants coming in, and for them to experience this kind of a thing in the heart of a city can be disheartening. But as you said, at the same time, you were just coaching in a Victorian club. That itself shows that it's not the whole thing that you see, and sometimes it's what we consume on media, and it's usually we get you know sometimes how we perceive the reality can be elevated with what we see and what we consume from media, and it's always on the negative side. But experiences like yourself, your story, and what your journey has been is an inspiration for the migrant who's trying to stand up and build a life that they're pursuing. So that, I think, message I wanted to send across in this podcast. Hopefully that will connect with someone who's listening.
It's driven with, mine was like, even when I wrote the book, it was driven by these odd jokes of, oh, this Uber driver could be your cousin, or this 7-Eleven guy could be your cousin, and like, okay, man, like, it's funny for the first 1,000 times, and then you're like, I need to educate people on what our perspective is, what do we actually go through, and that we actually do love this country, and we here by choice now. If we were to go back, we'll probably get a lot higher paying job, everything, but we do see an amazing life here, and we value what we have here.
Beautiful, Divesh. um, I know in the beginning of the call you said that you are a storyteller. That's one of the key parts, competencies, or strengths that I've seen in you, and you inspire other people to tell their stories, especially migrants. So evident by Migrants Life and the other platforms that you built. So I wanted to dive into After the Why. So it's another initiative that you founded. You are the founder. And I think the word itself is so powerful for me, because let's say your purpose is your why. For a migrant or anyone, you found your why, but what happens after the why could be that needle that keeps you going or bring you forward? Like what's the message? What's the behind after why?
So after the why was more around when I was talking to people, whether it's in corporate or startup world and everything, just them overusing Simon Sinek's TED Talk, um, and listening to that for, I don't know, like 10, 12 years. Well, you've got to find your why. And then you're like, man, what happens when I find it? If I don't have the means, if I don't know how to get stuff done after that. And you talk to a lot of people and like, oh, why didn't you do anything with that idea? And they would tell you that, oh, I didn't have the tech guy, or I didn't have this, I didn't have that, I didn't know what to do at this stage. And then you know that, okay, after you have that motivation, you've got your why, you need someone to get that stuff done for you, which is the what and how. And in 90% of the cases, you can't do it by yourself. And even if you tried, you'll probably burn out or give up. And that's where, like, okay, if I'm actually going to help other people achieve their dreams and I bring the ideas to life, it has to be something meaningful that's going to feed my soul and I could relate to. And it's actually a version of what I do. So, two things was I love doing cool stuff or challenging myself. And second was I like showcasing or helping other people do better, which is in itself such a great purpose to have in life. When you wake up every morning and you're like, I'm going to do this today, that I'm going to make a difference. And the little Divesh, like the naughty kid, is found a life in it. That's why it was called After the Why, because I actually wanted people to think that someone's there to be able to help the what and how.
That's very powerful because I 100% agree. Being a coach now, that I find a lot of people who has that why. And then I also believe why changes, and that's the you know change the nature of the universe, that sometimes your why is not constant, and you might have a bigger purpose, a why it's constant as you feel. But for me, it has changed from my experiences, adversities, challenges I face. And then in those moments when your why changes is where you start to question your purpose. And when that happens, I definitely believe if there is a guide to keep you grounded, and then to realize or nurture you to understand why you are here, and then how you can now take the next steps in your journey and find the what and the how, the world will be a beautiful place, and there will be more dreamers and then people who chase their dreams.
Definitely. And evolving the why or changing is good, but letting it die is not. I think if you say go out on the street this evening, you're standing at the lights, you're waiting for that man to turn green. If you had 5 people next to you and you asked 5 of them, do you have an idea that you could have built into $1 million company? I think at least 3 of them would say, yes, I did. And I think maybe one of them would have done it. So clearly that's your research piece, in a way. Then validates there's a lot of people whose idea just dies. And then they look at someone, oh, I thought of that 5 years ago. So I know that there's a lot of such cases out there.
um can you share a story, or a person or some kind of a success story, I would say, that where you feel you facilitated this type of a change or been a guide in someone's journey in their why, or maybe evolving why?
Trying to think who I can share because a lot of are the NDAs and stuff you're not allowed to disclose, but I can give you a high level idea where people have come to us, successful businessmen, investors, or they have an issue with their business and they want to make it more efficient. For example, they have a wholesale side of the business, but now they want to launch into retail and tap into the new part of the market. So, for example, say if someone like Woolworths came up to us and be like, okay, we need to do this, and that, we could make the whole iron system for them. where we've delivered. In terms of the one that I can think on top of was a totally product relaunch, where there was an investor who was not happy with the current team. He was only good at the talking side of it and the relationship, where he needed someone who understood the product, the sales, and the marketing and the tech side of it. And I could also manage a team for them. That's where I helped relaunch the MVP in 6 months. They had a white app level solution, and I launched about 48 apps for them in nearly a year.
That sounds like a true transformation. And definitely sounds like a case that where you guided a company in a commercial setting to really take action and drive that why to get business impact. Now, tying that back to the migrant side of things, because I know there's another initiative, right? Because as you said, jack of all trades. Migrants' life, and I find that you're someone who managed to find or create platforms for migrants to showcase their stories. How have you been? Where is this inspiration coming from? And because I find that that is such a way of your creativity coming into life. Because for me, I was fortunate enough to be featured in one of the events, but I felt like it was shedding light into my story in a way that I can go and tell my story to the world. And where does this come from, and what's the inspiration behind this?
Our inspiration is always driven by genuine problems in the community or with people, or where it actually makes someone's life better. That's always been the base and the value of us, where we've stood by. So, like I mentioned, the reason I wrote the book, which took me 5.5 years, 2 volumes, initially was meant to be a blog idea, was driven by, oh, this Uber driver could be a cousin. And people like that, where I knew there's the education piece we need. And people talk a lot about the culture's dying, or this is dying, or that is dying. I'm more like about, okay, let's do something about it than just talk about it. And then when the book was launched, I would go and do talks around it, or I would meet people around it, or I'll get random messages. I'm so glad you wrote this book. It's my story as well. And some would come up and say, oh, well, we're not that good with English, or we don't know how to communicate, we don't know how to talk. Who's going to write my story? And then you hear it a few times, you see a cycle. And then you're like, the same problem. I wish someone else did it because I don't have to do everything. That happened at the time of the book. That happened at the time of Migrant's life. And you know what? I was like, we've got the enablement of tech. We do it for other people. This is something close to heart. Why can't we do it for ourselves? And once I heard that enough, I was like, we're going to give it a go. And one thing we're not afraid to do is fail. And we knew for sure that we would impact a few lives at least. At least those people would remember it for the rest of their life. And hopefully we'll bring people from different countries who now call Australia home, being able to connect with each other. That's the worst that could have happened in the project, apart from me wasting a lot of money, but that's replaceable. So yeah, we did our first event, and that's how Migrant's life started.
Such an inspiring story. And when you were sharing that, because I remember I was in the same shoes when I started my journey. And now after years of talking about my story and then inspiring others too, I feel that I strongly believe that you cannot shape the external narrative without unlayering your internal one. That's where that you mentioned that you come across the same cycle over and over again. And I wanted to break it down from my understanding and some of the layers that the internal narrative carries. One is that layer of worthiness. Is my story worth to be shared? How do you address that? If someone thinks now is not worth, there are better stories, so I'm not ready. Is what my story is the same thing as someone else? I'm sure you hear a lot of this internal block. What would you say, and from your experience?
See, now it's a lot easier because people can go on the app and read similar stories, and they have a guide. Initially, it was so hard because I had no reference to show, nothing to do. But that's where you would tell them to talk to their loved ones, or to actually take a step back and ask them the question, if the day you landed, I would have asked you what would you like to achieve, how much of that have you achieved? And people don't do that a lot. We don't celebrate our wins, and it's just about ticking those boxes, and then before you know, you're in the rat race, and you try to then choose another level of it, where you want a bigger house, you want a bigger car, you have a kid, you want them to go to a private school, you want to do this, you want to do that, and you never really reflect. And in a lot of cases, you never actually got the opportunity to be able to openly say out loud that what kind of struggles you've gone through as well as a human being, and it's just been piling up inside you. So that's kind of what I would say to someone who's thinks their story is not good enough. Is that you have gone through a lot of hard times if you moved countries, for sure. Even if you spoke English well, you've had different challenges, because leaving everything and just starting fresh is not a joke. And I think it's one of the most underrated things in life.
And that addresses the next layer, the layer of permission. Who am I to tell the story? Because leaving everything behind um, with nothing, hardly anything, and moving a country itself is worth sharing. And sometimes you don't need permission, because sometimes we put a layer because of sometimes fear, but also the constructs we have from our upbringing, that it's not, I don't, it's not who am I to share that. It's kind of a, we always put ourselves that label of imposter, right? And then always finds a way.
I think that's the only person you need permission from is yourself. Just like how you gave yourself the permission to move here, how you gave yourself permission to get up from the first rejection, or the first letdown when you couldn't understand what the other person was saying, or when you couldn't get the job that you dreamt of, and the first rejection email on your job, or all those dreams that you have, or the first rejection of where you realize that your friends in your hometown have moved on, and you're that one person who's stuck behind. Now, it was the, like, in India you call NRIs non-reliable Indians or non-resident Indian. There's two versions of it, but those are the kind of things. And where do you belong, if that's the question you have to ask yourself? I think it's worth sharing that with the other people who feel the same way.
And that's the permission that you need, like from yourself, not from anyone else. Isn't that so? Beautiful. Divesh, getting into all the final parts of our conversation, I think I wanted to discuss about this other initiative you have, the Leader Speaks, which I find so inspiring as well. It's another platform you created. What were the goals and the vision behind Leader Speaks?
So while doing Migrant's Life, a lot of people will come to us and be like, oh, what if I'm not a migrant? Or what if I'm not ready to share my migration story, but I want to share what I've achieved? And again, you hear about it enough times, and you look at stuff, and like when you say look at your Forbes and nothing, there's a big gap where people need that platform to being able to share what they've achieved. A lot of hard work they've put in, whether they're a migrant or whether they've grown up here, or whatever journey they've gone through. I generally see a big gap, and that led us to create the Leaders Weeks, which is whether it's going down the line and helping them communicate better, or being able to share their story, being able to transfer the skills, being able to do things we're good at, but in a different domain. That's how we started with the idea, and also was given the opportunity to host Sunil Gavaskar, who's the guy behind the Border Gavaskar Trophy, one of them. And when I did that event, I knew for him as a leader, he was a perfect fit, and that's how we initiated the project, and now we're taking it next level. So on 26th of October, we are doing this event with Aaron Finch, the ex-captain of the Australian cricket team, where we are showcasing his story. We'll probably have more people in the panel, and there'll be an exhibition of leadership stories of what people have achieved, interviews, and then their story goes on the platform as well. So to help showcase people and helping them get the recognition they've been deserving from a long time.
And it's such a timely need as well, where I feel like you're constantly finding platforms to showcase those stories, and like without putting people things in a box or a label. And as you said, yeah, it you created the Migrants Life platform with the vision to support migrants, but if you look at other stories of the people, there's always unheard stories, and that needs recognition, and to showcase them, and then to appreciate the things that they've gone through. And then it's amazing to hear that you've interviewed Sunil Gavaskar, like in such a cricketing legend in India, who's transformed the cricket, like the history and then achievements, and then now to host Aaron Finch, who's an ex-cricket captain, World Cup winning captain, right? And really excited to how this pans out. And I think it's a platform that will serve such a that more people who are leaders. What do you, in your definition, a leader is?
I will answer that question, but before that, I do want to talk about the yes, with the leader speaks. The goal is to be able to bring things to life that usually don't happen. So even with Aaron, we're doing the leadership event, the talk and everything. But before that, there's a 2 hour of cricket masterclass
Oh wow.
where you as a person get an opportunity to be able to train with Aaron Finch for 2 hours, which are the kind of things which takes a lot of effort to try and pull off. But you try and create those once in a lifetime sort of opportunities for people. To answer your question, who a leader is, in simple words, the one who's taking the lead, where there's a genuine problem, whether it's the community that needs, whether your family that needs, whether it's your friend that needs, anyone, and even for yourself, where you actually addressing a problem or making the world a better place or giving back so that the next person can help the other one and passing on that message or paying it forward. That's, in my sense, is a leader. You don't have to be a CEO to call yourself a leader, in my case.
I mean, that's brilliant. Like sometimes, yeah, society understand leadership in someone who leads a country or a company or has a title to them, but the true leadership is leadership within. And then the story of yourself itself is a prime example of who a leader is, and continuously putting yourself out there to create platforms and inspiring other people.
Definitely, these are the things we are generally driven by that. So, 99% of what I am is what other people have taught me. So, mentorship, having those leaders, people to look up to. Migrants' life is an emotional topic for me, which is very close to heart. All these things we've done, it's all been driven by things we're generally passionate about. So that even if I have to be awake till 2 a.m. doing stuff for someone's story or planning the project or doing this today or that today and only having 24 hours in a day, we can only do it because we genuinely are crazy about it.
This conversation has been amazing, and I know I can have a conversation and then continue this. But I'm really excited for the upcoming event, and including the masterclass as well. I know there's a lot of genuine tricks that I might learn as well if I attend, so I'm really looking forward to that. But I want to end the conversation with like a couple of questions that I usually ask from each and every guest. Um, First question is, I know we talked about your upbringing, the work that you do, the platforms you created, your identity. If you strip all of that, who will be that Divesh, and what is he thriving for?
Um, I would say he's the naughty kid at school who no one believed would probably even clear year 10. And now he's seeing how much he can push himself and challenge himself.
Beautiful.
That's the unlayered version of it.
Amazing. What's one thing you unlayered in your life or your journey?
One thing that I would like to share that I think other people could probably try to use in their life is that giving back is one of the most fulfilling things in life. Being able to play even a little bit role in someone's life is something that would live even when you're gone. So people talk about being immortal or this or that. That's being immortal in my version. Is that passing on that learning or being able to help someone or add that value in someone's life? That will stay there even when you are gone, and that will live through it.
What a powerful way to end our conversation. And yeah, I don't have any words to comment on that.
This has been amazing. Every second of it, I've really enjoyed. In some ways, you've actually helped me think deeper as well and push myself with all these answers. And I don't really talk that long on podcasts and stuff, so I've done a lot of these. So thank you to you, and that's a credit to you. Like, you're a great listener. You're actually in it, and it's an honor that I was invited in. And thank you for having me.
It's truly an honor to have someone like you, and really thanks for saying yes and accepting my invitation. And thanks for the beautiful conversation, Divesh. Really appreciate it. Chat to you again.
Appreciate it, Pam.
Thanks.